I think Gutenberg is hated less than it was when it first came out. I know people did not like it. And I would say for anyone starting a business, like don't lose focus of like sleep, eating healthy, because you can only go so long without that having ramifications. There are power in backlinks, but I'm not a huge fan of going out and building them manually. Taking it from like the 0 to 65 domain authority, we don't have a blog. So we took it from 0 to 65 domain authority, all just using.
Do you think it can ever replace Elementor or Divi? Hi guys, welcome to this channel and thank you so much for watching. Today we have Brian with us. Brian Jackson is somebody who I look up to as an inbound marketer and a fellow WordPress developer. And thank you so much, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Brian, let me just start with a simple question. What's up?
What's up?
Yeah.
We're definitely keeping busy. My brother and I with our business. So I mean, WordPress, that's the one thing I like about WordPress too, is that it's always changing. So never the same. So
absolutely.
But yeah, super busy. So never a dull moment, you could say.
Absolutely. And I think WordPress has evolved so much in the last few years, especially after Gutenberg. There's a lot of action going on.
Oh yeah. And it's almost a hybrid, like switching, because I mean, before you had the classic editor and like, you know, everything was the same. And now you kind of have people that are still using the classic editor and then people are using the blocks. And so you kind of have it split now, which actually makes it harder, I think, for new people too, because they kind of see both things happening. I wish everyone could just get into the blocks. I love blocks now that I've taught myself how to use them and like I see what the potential is. Like I think blocks is the future, but like I think it's hard for newer people because you see kind of both things happening. It's kind of confusing sometimes.
It can be overwhelming for some people. Yeah. What are your thoughts on full site editing?
I don't think it's there yet. Like obviously WordPress core team that's their goal, is to design your site any way you want, you know, with just using WordPress out of the box, basically. And then all the patterns and stuff they have in the repository. It's nowhere close to being where I need it to be for building a site that I want. So, you know, I'm a big fan of GeneratePress, so I still use like a theme. But I use blocks and I do use a lot of the native core WordPress stuff now. It is getting better, but it's nowhere.
Do you think it can ever replace Elementor
a whole site? You can't do a whole site yet. Oh, I think it's going to be years. I mean, minimum 5 years to even get close. I think the WordPress core team, I think, is always they're always pushing it, and it seems like they think it's going to happen in like a year or two, but it's going to take a long time, I think, because you have all these page builders and themes also developing, pushing out features at the same time. So like, it's hard for WordPress core to like even catch up to what they're doing. So
do you think that is the end goal?
It's hard to know, because whenever you read the marketing stuff from WordPress or like watch some of their presentations, like they don't talk about other themes much, or like how full site editing will integrate with the themes. It seems like they're going for like, you know, install WordPress, do everything in WordPress and out of the box, and you're good to go without installing a theme perhaps. So I don't know, but again, I think we're a long ways off from full site editing. I think people will still like install WordPress and then go install a theme or a page builder. I think that'll happen for a while still.
Absolutely. Imagine if full site editing takes over. Do you think that is a good for ecosystem?
I think if it works well, I would like it. I mean, one less thing to worry about. If you can do everything you need in the full site editor, then I have no problem using it. Like I hope they keep improving it. But like you've probably used Elementor, right? Like there's so many things, like it's just every business needs something different. And like, you know, they're probably going to have to install something to make something work. And so I don't know. I see a hybrid approach happening for years to come. So, but I hope they keep adding stuff. I think they're doing a good job. I think Gutenberg is hated less than it was when it first came out. I know people did not like it. And I think people are starting to see like, wow, you can do a lot with these blocks and they're actually pretty quick and easy to use. I don't like it from a writing perspective as much, just because blocks are kind of like, I use another tool to write all my blog posts and then I put it in WordPress, because blocks for writing is just like, it's too, it interrupts you too much. Like I actually prefer the classic editor for just writing because there was no interruptions. You just one big block basically. But
absolutely.
But for building a site, the blocks make definitely more sense because you can drag and drop. You have responsive columns, which was always a problem with the classic editor. Like just simple things that should work, like now work really great with blocks. So it's they're headed in the right direction for sure.
Absolutely. So let's just talk about your WordPress journey. Help me understand like when you started and how has been your journey with WordPress so far.
Yeah, so I started a long time ago, but I built my first WordPress site in 2008. Still on the Wayback Time Machine, found it, so I pinpointed the date. I think it was December 2008. And I started actually as an entrepreneur kind of in high school, like reselling CDs and DVDs on eBay.
Oh my God, hustling, huh?
Yeah, hustling. I was the one like in study hall, like listing things on eBay while all my friends were just joking off, eating lunch. I was actually like sitting at the computer in the library, like going on eBay. I was the nerd, you could say, for sure. But then I got into building like custom computers. And so I actually built my WordPress site where you could customize which parts you wanted. And then order it. And I would actually, this was before Amazon even existed, like really. So no one had like fast shipping, it wasn't like a thing. So people would order the computers from my WordPress site. I would then order the parts from Newegg after they paid me, get the parts, build it, and then ship it to them. So it was like a 4-week like a month turnaround.
Wow, that is amazing.
But then it wasn't like a huge deal. Now you can get Amazon. I ordered something the other day and it was here under an hour. Like, I don't know where the warehouse is, but it must literally be right next to me. So I did that kind of all through high school, did the custom building computer stuff. And I used WordPress for like people buying the computers and stuff. And all through college, I started my own web hosting company. And so I built a WordPress site to like sign up WordPress hosting clients.
That must be interesting,
And this was back in like the horrible days of like cPanel and just the everything was horrible with WordPress, and in my opinion, and the hosting was bad, and it's just you don't have all the cool stuff you do like nowadays.
So this was way before the Kinsta, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Kinsta didn't even exist. WP Engine didn't even exist yet. So this was back when it was like only GoDaddy, all the shared really slow hosting providers at that point. And kind of did that through college. And then I sold my web hosting company during college because I got too busy with classes and I couldn't handle the support tickets. I would literally go to class, come back, and do tickets up until like 2 a.m. and it just repeated until I kind of burned out.
Oh my God, that is my favorite topic, support tickets. I will come back to that later once we are talking about ForgeMedia.
Yeah. So I kind of burned out, sold my web hosting company, and then I kind of got into IT ever since then. But I always was doing WordPress blogging on the side, just like sharing like IT problems, how to troubleshoot things. I love just writing. I've always loved writing. And so WordPress obviously is great for blogging. And I guess fast forward out of college, I got into some IT stuff, didn't use WordPress for a while, then decided like, I hate IT. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. It's just like fixing problems over and over. It's too stressful. And I hated the cubicle type of lifestyle. So I was like, I'm done with this. So I looked for a remote company and actually got a company with KeyCDN at the time. And they're a content delivery network, kind of like Cloudflare. People are probably familiar with Cloudflare. So I worked at KeyCDN for a while, writing content
I remember that. I remember watching your tutorials, and KCDN was just coming up with their services,
Yeah,
and at the
yeah,
time I think the huge deal, Max CDN was the huge deal,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
was the
Max CDN.
Cloudflare. It was the
Yep,
Cloudflare of that time.
yep, yeah. No, Max CDN was definitely like our biggest competitor. And
Mhm.
before I came on, they were like really just focused on like other development communities like Laravel, not WordPress. And so when I came on, we
Mhm.
started like, targeting WordPress people and stuff. And then after a year and a half or so at KeyCity, and I realized like, wow, I just want to focus on WordPress. Like I don't care about really all the other developer communities, which there's a ton of different ones out there.
Mhm.
I just want to do WordPress. So I kind of looked around for different companies, and um, I was hosting at WP Engine at the time, my own websites, just personal stuff.
Mhm.
And I kept having issues. I did not like it. So I stumbled across Kinsta at the time. They were like only a 5-person team at that point, and I actually Skype called the CEO because at that time he was still like doing tickets himself. Like
Oh
that's
my
how
god.
small they were.
Mhm.
And so like I chatted with him on Skype, and we just like clicked right off the bat. And I think he saw kind of what I was doing at KeyCDN, like with the content. And so it was like kind of like just a perfect fit. And so I joined the Kinsta team, and then just went kind of hardcore into WordPress marketing for the next couple of years. I was just like head down writing WordPress like nonstop from like when I woke up to when I went to bed. It was pretty hardcore.
I remember it was one of the best contents that you were putting out, and man, the speed that you had and the length of the content. It's still, I think, whenever we are working on some new content ideas, I still give your example to my content team.
All
That
right.
is, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you
That's
are
cool.
one of the best inbound marketers I think I know or I have seen in the
Oh,
WordPress
wow.
community. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that means a lot. It definitely, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I think sometimes people I don't think realize how much work goes into it. And it's just, yeah, it was literally like waking up at 8 a.m. writing
Mhm.
till sometimes till like midnight. Cause we were, people don't realize like when you work we were a startup at that point still. Like when you're at a startup, it's not like a normal company. Like you hustle. Like it's not like an 8 to 5. Like you hustle
Mhm.
because I was part of the team too. So this is public knowledge, but like I do have a ownership in part of Kinsta. So I still
Wow.
want them to succeed even though I'm not there anymore.
Wow. You're
Um,
earning a lot of things from that.
yeah. So, obviously, you want the company to work at to succeed. And so, just you're hustling as fast as you can. Um, but the problem with that is after a couple years, I kind of got burned out again.
Mm.
So, and it kind of like a repeat for me. I get burned out just on a cycle. It seems like I think it's a problem for entrepreneurs too, because
Mhm.
you're just so focused on what you're doing, you kind of forget to take care of yourself sometimes. um, and so I decided to leave Kinsta back in, what was it, 2019, 2020. It was literally right before the pandemic hit. So I quit my job, and then the pandemic hit basically.
Oh my
um,
God.
but I quit there and decided to go out and do my own thing with my brother. He also quit his job. He was kind of also burned out. He was doing WordPress development for a different
Mhm.
company. And we were like, you know what? I think let's just do something on our own. It'll be slower pace where we're not like, working from 8 a.m. to midnight, and just like, it won't be a startup mentality. It'll be just like two people in Slack, just kind of, it's a lot slower.
Mm.
And so that's what we're still doing today. And yeah, we're building our business. We have a couple plugins that we work on, and I still try to blog whenever I find time. So
Yeah, I think you guys are doing phenomenal job with the plugins you are creating. I'll come to that later, but I just wanted to get your point of view on you mentioned you had a lot of drive when you were working at Kinsta. What drove you to come up with that speed of execution?
um, you know what? I don't know, because I definitely don't have the same energy I had when I started Kinsta for sure. um, I I think the main driver was partially because I had used WP Engine myself, so I kind of knew like I knew what I struggled with as like a consumer for hosting,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew at that point there weren't very many other managed WordPress hosts. There was like I think WP Engine and Flywheel were like the two
Mm,
biggest ones. Like Cloudways wasn't that big yet.
mm,
GoDaddy wasn't really doing managed hosting yet, so it's like the managed hosting was kind of in its infancy still. Um, and now you have tons of managed hostings. Like there's probably hundreds of different managed ones. But so I think I saw like just sitting at KeyCDN, I think I saw an
mm.
opportunity at Kinsta to be like, wow, there's a huge gap in the marketing and the content side of WordPress hosting performance space. And
Right.
like, I think after talking with like the CEO, Mark, and Tom, who is one of the other co-founders of Kinsta, we just like all clicked and we were like, wow, I think we can crush this. Like if we do this right. And so that was the goal. Like when I started, like I've also done a lot of SEO like through over the years. And so like, I kind of knew going in, like what I really needed to do. And so it was just like, grinding nonstop. I knew what I needed to do, went head on. And for us, the biggest problem was just time. Like
Mm.
it's just like we rinse and repeat everything the same day, and finally over, I would say 2.5 years, we finally got to like, wow, we got to a place where they're kind of just like an unstoppable machine at this point, basically.
I think without you, Kinsta wouldn't have been what it is today because you have done phenomenal job at that company. I didn't even know what Kinsta was, but whenever I was searching for anything, I used to get Kinsta results. And I remember you were in the key city, and so I knew you. I mean, whenever I see author profile, I see, okay, this is the guy I know, but I don't know this Kinsta company. And I think a lot of people landed on your results, and that's how they you know got introduced to Kinsta. And if you weren't there, I don't think they would have be they would have become what they are today.
Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate that. And it wasn't just me for sure. Like Tom, who was the other co-founder, he helped. It was him and me in Trello, like all day long, just like strategizing, doing content. So like, yeah, Tom was another huge impact for the content stuff.
So when you are strategizing, how do you strategize for for as an inbound marketer, how do you strategize for the content in your company?
Yeah. Well, I think for us, the big thing we saw was because like WP Engine had a blog, at that point
Mm-hmm.
already, but we
Mm-hmm.
saw like it was just like generic content, just like
Mm-hmm.
list posts and like. So our strategy going in was like, I've always blogged in my past, like
Mm-hmm.
how do you fix a problem, and like here's the solution. So like when we went in, we were like, let's do tutorials rather than just like a bunch of list posts, because I mean, just list posts are just like, I don't know. I hate list posts. Like it's just like spam to me almost. Um, and so we focused on like, like how to speed up first time to first byte, like how to, all these different tutorials on like performance related, and like even like how to be better at Twitter. Like we figure like if we could get anybody who might sign up for Kinsta to hit our site, that was our goal. Like let's just do all the tutorials we can think of that would be like business owners and people that would benefit from Kinsta.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of content that was not directly hosting related. Like our goal was to like drive as much traffic as we could, to get people to see Kinsta, to like build the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we focus on long-term content, as you mentioned before, like the length was a big part for us too, because at that time, WP Engine was focused like, they were just like whipping out 800 word articles at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and so we went straight into like 3,000, 4,000 word blog posts, like just right off the bat. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's all we did for years. And then we did the long like learn posts, which was, I think the SEO one we did was like, it's like 40,000 words. And then I wrote the speed
Oh
up
my God.
book. Like we published the how to speed up your WordPress. We published a book that we took
Mm-hmm.
to the word camps. So that was, I don't know how many words that was. It's a whole book, but it was, yeah, length and tutorials was like a huge, huge thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
like
Great.
fixing someone's problem, I guess, is what I would say. Like, don't just like whip out list posts. Like, it's not going to work. So if you're doing list posts, just stop doing it. It's not going to work.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on quality versus quantity? Were you guys publishing a tutorial a day or two, or how was it?
I think when I first started at Kinsta, we were doing 2 to 3 a week. So sometimes it was like only 2. And so, but it takes a lot of time. Like, people don't realize too sometimes that like for a 4,000 word blog post, there's a lot of research that goes into it and a lot of time. So like one of those posts can take 2 days to write. So, we were doing about 2 to 3 a day or a week. And we did that consistently for like nonstop for like 2 years. And then, as we grew and, we started to then like kind of hire some writers too. And we kind of like grew the volume a little bit, but for the first 2 years there, we were just doing 2 to 3 a week, I would say.
How do you keep patience and conviction in that time? Because 2 to 3 days for an article, and once you publish an article, it's not, the results are not going to come instantly.
Yeah.
How did you had that conviction? Okay, this is going to work.
I mean, you could say some of it was a gamble, I guess, too. It's a mixture of gambling. Part of it was some of my SEO knowledge, from before, seeing like at KeyCDN, kind of seeing like, okay, this worked, this didn't. So, experience obviously helps if you're trying to like do content marketing. So a little bit of that experience, using the right tools. So like we used Ahrefs extensively. SEMrush is another good one if someone wants another tool. But we use that and Trello like extensively. So any topic we were wanting to write about, like we went first and looked at like the keyword research to see like how much volume there was. And we put that in the Trello card. And then we would kind of like prioritize the bigger volume first, which is sometimes the opposite of what people do, because sometimes people will go to try to grab the smaller volume because it has less competition. We just went straight off the bat. We're like, we're going for the big ones. Like, we don't care how long it takes, like, which is a gamble because it can take a long time if you're going against other competition. And we're just like, let's hit the big ones, the big volume. And I would say over a couple of years, it finally started, paying off as we kind of started ranking higher and higher and higher. So, but that's another strategy, I guess. If you're not crunched for time, is going for the bigger volume can actually be a very good strategy, but it's going to take time, especially if you're just like starting with a brand new domain name. Like you allow also years.
Yeah. Long-term game is always the right game to play.
Yep.
So you also mentioned burnout, and nobody mentions burnout in the WordPress community. It's definitely there. So
yeah,
help me, help us understand, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem actually. And like you said, there's only a few individuals that I've ever seen, like there's a few that blog and talk about it publicly, but like rarely anyone ever talks about it. And I think it's a huge problem probably in any niche, but of just like, especially with startups, that there's no time to take breaks, it seems like. And so you're just hustling, and you really forget to take care of yourself. And so for me, like, I wasn't exercising, like, even though I look skinny, like that doesn't mean you're healthy at all. And I've had health problems before. So I just forgot to take care of myself. I wasn't like, exercising, eating right, sleeping. Sometimes I would work till 2 or 3 a.m. and then I'd wake up at 7. So it's, you can't do that for years on end and not have it like impact you at some level. And so eventually I just got to the point of like, man, I am just exhausted. And I talked with like the founders and said, like, I'm so proud of like, where we've gotten Kinsta. And like, at that point, it's like, you guys can take it from here. Like Kinsta is kind of unstoppable. Like we're just keep going. And like, when I joined, there was like 5 to 8 people. And when I left, there was a little over 100.
Wow.
So, at that point, there were more systems in place to kind of like keep Kinsta going without me at that point. So
Mhm.
I felt good about stepping away kind of at that point because I knew Kinsta was kind of would succeed even with me gone. So, um, and now I think they have like 250 employees. So it's
Wow.
just nuts. But yeah, burnout is definitely a thing. And like I said, even in college, like I sold my hosting company because like I burned out there too. Like I was trying to juggle tickets, running the hosting company, and then also doing classes full time. It was just like it was nuts. I was like, I can't do this. And so, I was like chugging Red Bulls in my dorm room,
Hmm.
um, like at night while my roommate was sleeping. I was like chugging Red Bulls at my computer doing tickets, just and it's horrible. And so and kind of got burned out there too. So I've had a couple cycles of burnout, and
Hmm.
I will never make that mistake again. I'm actually in a very good place in my life now where, I get 8 hours of sleep. I exercise every day. I literally just went for a bike ride like 2 hours before
Oh,
this.
that I enjoy
Um,
bike rides. I love bike rides.
I do too. Yeah. Um, and so, and I eat healthy now.
Hmm.
I'm gluten free, and I just stopped like a month or two ago. I just stopped drinking soda. Cross my
Great.
fingers, cut out all the soda. I still drink a Starbucks from time to time,
Hmm.
but this doesn't have much sugar in it actually. So I've just been in kind of like self improvement since I left Kinsta, like working on myself. And I think it's hard when you're at a startup to like keep focus on both. It is possible, and I know a lot of people do it. I just got out of control, I guess you could say. I just lost focus. So I would say for anyone starting a business, like don't lose focus of like sleep, eating healthy, because you can only go so long without that having ramifications.
Absolutely. And in WordPress, people have a lot of fear when it comes to timing. Like this needs to be done very, very rapidly, or else we will lose the time. And people don't realize that the best thing about WordPress that I like, it's a very long game. If you can give
Mhm.
quality plugin or a team or code or tutorial, anything, if you are publishing, if you are a creator of anything that is quality in the WordPress community, it's a long game. It existed,
Yeah.
everything which exists in the ecosystem right now, it existed a decade ago. So,
Yep.
and it will, I think, from what we are experiencing, it will still continue to exist at least 5 to 7 or maybe 10 years. So WordPress is a long game. It's not like a lot of cycles where we have to it's not like stock trading. It's extremely reliable, and it's extremely slow, as you if you just know how to play along with the community.
Yep. No, I agree. And I mean, WordPress is still growing fast. So I think even with the pandemic, kind of actually almost helped WordPress in a way too, because like
Hmm.
everyone was like starting WordPress sites and websites and businesses, and so the market share kind of went up really fast during those kind of like 2 years, and so um, I think it's at like 43% of the web right now is powered by WordPress, and like you said, in a decade from now, that might change. 10 or 20 years from now, it might be, it might start going down at some point, and like
Yeah,
Shopify might dominate, but like we're nowhere close to that. There's still decades before anything like that happens. And so it's still a great time to start WordPress stuff, I think.
absolutely. And I don't think we need to really stress upon the timing part, right? There's no
Yeah.
need to burn out. What I'm trying to say is the burnout problem is real. Everybody is focusing on, I mean, everybody's facing that. I don't think we need to really worry about if we are going to lose it in the competition, because it's a very long game. WordPress has a lot of time and gap which allows us to stay healthy and play. That is one thing I really like about the ecosystem. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on Shopify? What do you see? Like, uh, I mean, it's got a lot of potential for sure, right? But
It,
have you ever
yeah,
have you ever thought as a company to try something new in the Shopify market?
I, I've only used Shopify once, I'll be honest, but I do know quite a bit about it because at Kinsta, we kept like really close eye on like what other competitors, even in other CMSs were doing, just to kind of, whatever, seeing what everything was what everyone was doing. But I still don't like Shopify because of the customization part of it. Like you can't, the beauty of WordPress is that there's like 100 different ways to do something. Might say that's also the curse of WordPress is that there's 100 different ways. So you can pick the wrong way too with WordPress sometimes, which is the problem. But with Shopify, there's literally most of the time there's just one way to do something. And I just don't like that. I've never liked that philosophy. I really like the open source part of WordPress. And that's why I've never really had the urge to use Shopify for literally anything because I love having to, with WordPress, if I want to do this, I can choose between like 30 different plugins and I can find the one that I really like and the developers that I like and support them. And it gets better over time. So it's just, you don't really have that with Shopify other than, Shopify probably does improve over time, but you don't have like a community with the developers as close either. And so, yeah, I think Shopify is dominating the space, like for sure, like e-commerce, like they're dominating, especially even today, there was the, I don't want to bring up crypto, but the partnership with Strike and to accept Bitcoin over the Lightning Network for Shopify, like they are at the cutting edge of stuff happening. And that's the one thing I really admire about Shopify. With WordPress, I kind of looked today after that announcement. So I was like, what would it take to accept like Bitcoin in our easy digital downloads store for WordPress? And there's just nothing there where I can do that at the moment with. So it's way behind. And that's the one thing I don't like about WordPress. It takes it's a long-term game, like you said, but things also take a long time to happen sometimes. And so I think Shopify is ahead in some ways in technology, but
true. So as a solution, they are absolutely winning in the e-commerce space, but WordPress is a different community. It's a different mindset. It's a different approach. So I think both of them will exist in the future, and that is the right balance in the future. So SEO, I just want to get your opinion on that. If somebody is just starting and plugin or theme company who is just developer or company owner just watching this video and thinking, man, how do I use content marketing for my products and my services? So please help us with that. Try to give some tips or quick things which we can act on it today.
Specifically SEO related?
Yeah, for content marketing.
So I would say definitely content length for sure. Don't do short stuff. It's just not going to work. Like don't even try that. So length over quantity is what I would say. Like if you can only do one a week, but it's like a long one, that's fine. Like it might take you a while, but like you'll keep building on your long form content, which is fine. So definitely length. I would also say look at your competition first too, and kind of make a game plan. Like if because there's different like niches within the WordPress community. So look at them, see like if they're all doing like just list posts and short content, then there's probably an open, probably a little window there where you could maybe do the long form content and slowly rank higher than them. People will say there are power in backlinks, but I'm not a huge fan of going out and building them manually. I think content is so powerful that you don't need to do that as much.
Right.
Now, an example of that is one of our newer plugins, our Novashare plugin, which we actually started after I left Kinsta. So it's fairly new still. Like I think it's a year and a half old maybe. But like our domain authority, I think I just looked the other day, it's like 65. And I have not built a single backlink. I have never asked for a backlink. I've never reached out for a backlink. I've never done a single email regarding anything with links. And so to go from 0 to a domain authority of 65, just with content, that's all it was. So people, I think, always underestimate the power of, I like to say the power of words, but I am kind of very nerdy when it comes to content. Like I love writing and I just think people underestimate it still. They think you need to like, I see this all the time. They push out list posts, then they hire cheap backlink builders on Fiverr, and they get in a cycle of things that are just not the right way to start. So like focus on the quality of the content. That is the best way you can build the foundation. Now there's nothing wrong against building backlinks. And as we grew bigger at Kinsta, like we actually did have someone that was kind of slowly doing that. Like, but we didn't have someone really doing that until like a year and a half after we started. So like at first it was just all content. And the nice thing about if you write really good content, like people see it and people underestimate, like people will share the content if it's really good. And when people share it, other people link to it, and then it will literally like create its own backlinks by itself. So if you think about it like that, you're almost doing two things at once. You're like building backlinks in a way just because of how great your content is. So I would say like spend all of your time on the quality of the content. But again, it's a long-term game. I know that it maybe sounds easy, but there's a lot of work that goes into content.
Absolutely.
Research, Trello, looking up keyword research, SEO, volume. And some people have a hard time coming up even with topics. I have never once had that problem in my life. For some reason, I tend to ramble on. So I always think of things to write about, and my Trello board's like never empty, but I know some people have had had that problem. But again, look at your competitors for some of that stuff. I don't like to say like you shouldn't copy people, but like you can find there's nothing wrong with looking at your competitors and finding a topic that like, oh wow, that's a good topic. I'll add that to my Trello board and I'll do some of my own research and write about that too. So there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, doing research for finding topics. I would say tracking everything too is pretty important. Tom was actually more OCD about that than I was. I was more focused on just like deadlines for getting my content out, but he was like always in Google Analytics, like all day long, just like focusing on like what we're doing really well on and what's not doing well. And that's actually another tip would be things that aren't doing well. If you've spent a long time on it, research 4,000 words and it's not doing well, like after 6 months, like there's probably something wrong at that point, maybe. And you might want to revisit it. And I would say even add more content to it. I know that sounds crazy, but going back and seeing like what's not doing well and trying to figure out ways to improve it, like add some more diagrams to it if you don't have many images in it, add more content, add more quotes. I love adding like quotes from like reputable sources, like mixing them into this middle of blog post. And just doing little things to help improve things that are maybe not doing as well. And over time, that will hopefully help maybe the content that's not doing well, bring it back up better.
So you think what would be the right balance of amount of content we should put out in a month?
So if you're doing, let's bring up my calculator. I'm horrible at math.
That's
my bike ride wore me out actually. My brain is not working. Let's just say you're doing 2 a week, but they're like really good 4,000 word posts, like really good quality, 2 a week, 4 weeks, 8 posts. So let's just say like you're in the ballpark of 8 to 10 posts a month. Say if you can do that. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, like even, let's say you just do a minimum of 8 times 12 months. I mean, that's 96 blog posts. So that's a lot over 1 year. And even though it doesn't sound like a lot every week, it's a lot over the long term. That's why you got to think about it in like a year or two, because 96 posts after 1 year, but they're all like 4,000 words. That is a lot of content that Google is crawling, a lot of different stuff. So just give yourself time to think about it in the long-term frame. And one other tip with that too is I just thought of would be to, once we got into a cycle, we would probably spend 75% of our time on new content and 25% of our time on updating old content.
Oh, wow.
So people actually don't realize like how much time we were going back and like updating old things. And as we kept growing, we always kept that 25% like updating things in there. So we had a whole Trello column for just updates. So like part of my week was like writing new content and then updating old content, and it would just
Wow.
keep going on that cycle. So
How did you learn of all of that? Because we don't see this thing in the web. People don't talk about this. How did you learn all of this?
A lot of it was just from experience, from like my own personal blogging over the years. And then also at KeyCDN, like I learned a lot of stuff actually during my time at KeyCDN. Like as far as they were a very, the co-owners of KeyCDN were very analytical. They were both from Switzerland, Swiss, and they're just like they just like always think analytical, not really joking ever, and it's just very serious, which is funny, but like it helped a lot because one of the owners was like always kind of in analytics too, and always focused on like, we need to do better here because this is not working right here. And so we were always going back and Google Analytics saying like, why is this post that we spent all this time on not producing anything? So over time I would see like, okay, we spent more time going back, adding things to it, resharing it on social media. You got to do the whole cycle when you update stuff, putting it back in your newsletter because you probably it hasn't been in there for a while, things like that. And over time it just builds on itself. And I saw it working when you do that cycle. And so going into Kinsta, like after we had enough content, we started going back and updating old stuff, and just that cycle works really, really well. And I do that with all of my stuff for our plugins, all the docs, constantly go back and update stuff. My marketing blog, constantly go back and update stuff. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of stuff's old and I don't have a lot of time to update stuff. But whenever I get a chance, you always go back to that cycle.
So what motivated you to start ForgeMedia?
So we started with, so right now we have 3 plugins: our coupons plugin, our Perfmatters plugin, and our Novashare plugin.
I think Perfmatter was the first one, right?
No, coupons actually was our first one.
Really?
And it started out as we have our marketing blog Workup, and I wanted something to add just coupons like on the sidebar and like on the deals page. And at the time we started coupons, there wasn't actually very many options out there. There was like 1 or 2 coupon plugins out there, but they weren't really well developed at the time yet. And so my brother, being a WordPress developer, I was like, hey, can you whip something up for me pretty quick? And he's really good at coding. And so he was working at another company, but he kind of just did this in the evening, and we whipped it up for Workup. And over time, we had people just like visiting our marketing blog, and they kept DMing me on Twitter and like filling out our contact forms and like, hey, what is this running on your blog? Like, how are you doing this? And I want to do this. And so I kept telling them like, well, we built it ourselves. And I kept seeing that over and over. And so we had the idea of like, what if we just bundle it, sell the plugin, let's just see what happens. Like, we have nothing to lose. And we just did this in the evenings. I was at Kinsta still. We kind of installed EDD. That was my first time going like down the EDD rabbit hole, the more e-commerce side of WordPress, and really figuring all that stuff out. We started selling it, kind of like promoted it on our marketing blog a little bit. And I just kind of like, shared stuff on social media with some people, and we started selling it and took off a little bit. And that's kind of how we started getting into the WordPress stuff. And the ForgeMedia really started because we needed an LLC kind of for legal purposes for the money. And so we had to come up with a name, and we came up with ForgeMedia. We're actually not very creative people. And so ForgeMedia is what we came up with the logo with like a little pickaxe miner.
It's cool. I mean, the name and the branding, I think it's very cool. And especially the Novashare, what led you to, create? So you've got coupon plugin, right? It was doing great. Then you started Perfmatter. It was all going fine. What led you to start with Novashare? What motivated you?
Novashare was really because obviously we started Perfmatters, which if anyone doesn't know is an optimization plugin to speed up sites. And that was the motivation from that was I saw all the problems working at Kinsta of like, oh my God, I could do this probably in a different way better, or I don't like how this plugin's doing it. So let's do it this way. And so we kind of started that plugin because of that. But then Novashare was really, even though we're plugin developers, we use plugins just like everybody else does to do all the other things on our sites. And so at the time, I didn't like any of the social media plugins. Like I had used all the alternatives and a lot of them had performance issues. So I was like, this is frustrating because it's from the front end and looking at it, like it's such a small thing. Like why does this slow your site down? Should it not?
Absolutely.
But a lot of it comes down to like how they crawl and do the database queries for share count sometimes, and how big their files are, like for CSS and JavaScript, or if they use jQuery, all this stuff comes into account. And some plugins did some things right, some did other things wrong. And so I was like, since we were already in the performance space, we're like, let's do a performance focused social sharing plugin. And so that was kind of the motivator for that. And so far it's been doing really well. I think we get a lot of our people from other social sharing plugins that are they've had problems with the performance, or their plugin was too complicated. And we've really focused on just like staying stupid easy was our goal.
And beautiful. I must say, it's really beautiful.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the goal. And we'll never stray away from that. Even on our like features request page, I say like at the top, like we will always focus on performance. Like feel free to leave us a recommendation, please do. But we will never add anything that like sacrifices performance to this plugin.
So, as you scale with the plugins, the huge problem of support is definitely there. So for a WordPress company, how do you handle a support?
So I've definitely learned a lot of things over the couple of years doing plugin business. One thing is working at the startup at Kinsta, just me, my brother and I, we don't want to grow big. We don't want to be a huge company. We don't want to be a startup having to hustle. Like I've seen all the problems that come with that. Like eventually you have to hire an HR department and all that stuff that comes with being that big. And then Slack gets bigger, gets noisier. I mean, you probably use Slack, I'm sure. And just, how it goes. It just gets so distracting. It's just ridiculous. And then you have to figure out like which channel should you mute, and like it's just bonkers. And so there's a couple strategies we've used to keep it under control, I guess you could say, because we don't want to grow fast, which is weird. Some people do want to grow fast. We don't want to grow fast. We want to grow slow. We want to see growth for sure, but we don't want to grow fast. So one thing we do is we'll never have lifetime deals for our plugins. Couple of things. I don't like lifetime deals to begin with because I don't think they support developers. And I have no problems paying subscription or yearly fees to the plugins that I'm using from other people, because I want to help support them so the plugin gets better and that they fix all the problems with it. So with lifetime deals, you really have to structure it. You can do it, but you have to structure it as like, figuring out your customer lifetime value and like charging like $800 or something to make sure you don't.
Quality will obviously go down in the long term if you're charging.
Yeah, it's not a sustainable business model and not a good one in my opinion. And it doesn't help developers. But the other reason we don't do it is because we don't want an influx of like 10,000 clients overnight. And when you do, most people do the lifetime deals to get an influx of cash to do something. And we don't want the influx of cash, which I know sounds weird, but with the influx of cash comes the influx of support tickets. Absolutely. So that's another reason why we don't do lifetime deals. And when anyone asks us about that, I tell them there's two reasons. Like, it's not a sustainable business model. I have no problem paying developers for plugins. So I think, people should do the same. And then we don't want to grow too big, too fast. So that's one way to like keep your support tickets down. Like, just don't do lifetime deals. And I know some people might think that's controversial because there's a lot of that in the WordPress space. And I'm not against them either. If I see a lifetime deal, like I think GeneratePress did one, like, and obviously I picked that up as a no-brainer if they're offering it. Like I'm a consumer too, so like I grabbed it because it's a no-brainer. So, but again, like they're ones that if they had never launched it, I would have been completely fine paying GeneratePress for years because I use them for everything. And so, yeah, so that's about that. Another thing I think is focusing on your documentation. So this comes back to the content. So something strategy here is killing kind of two birds with one stone is for Novashare, taking it from like the 0 to 65 domain authority. We don't have a blog on the Novashare site. We don't have a blog. All we have is docs. So we took it from 0 to 65 domain authority, all just using docs. So people underestimate, like you can write docs to kind of for the user to fix the problems with your plugin, but you can also write them thinking of like, what if someone sees this, you know, just searching for how to do it with your plugin or something like. And so sometimes it might not look as nice, you know, like on our docs, we don't have comments like on a blog post at the bottom, which speaking of comments can help SEO. If you have a blog, take time to do the comments, moderate them, of course, but take time and they can help your SEO. But like for our docs, we don't have SEO, we don't have comments, we don't really have social sharing buttons on our docs either. So, you know, that's, I would say, downfalls to that approach. But if you don't have time, which we don't actually have time to do a blog on each plugin site and do the docs, we just don't have the time. So we focus on like really good content for the docs. So that's one approach. And the other benefit of that is it obviously helps with support tickets. Every single one of our features, every single toggle in the plugin has a tooltip, every single one that links to the doc, to the section in the doc of how to do things. And it's kind of OCD and maybe over obsessive, but every single thing has step 1, 2, 3, 4 of like, go to plugin settings, click on this tab, go to this place. And they all have arrows. So like very meticulous in the steps for every doc. The nice thing about that is if you're meticulous, it adds to your word count automatically for the doc.
Absolutely.
So you automatically get longer docs.
And I think it's very much to do with, you know, we being very precise in the sense that it should help the user. That's the intention, I think.
Yep. And then so that creates obviously less tickets because most people can, if you have good docs, most people can figure out the problem on their own. If you have really good, concise, you know, ways to figure out the issues. And another way to write good content is take your support tickets and add to your content from what you see is not already in there. So I constantly update docs from like things we've solved in support tickets. And I say like, oh, that's okay. That's another thing I don't have about that feature. So and I go back and I add to the doc. So it's like a never ending cycle of support tickets to improving your content back and forth.
What tool do you guys use for the support?
So this, some people might laugh at, but it works really well for two people. We use a shared Gmail inbox.
Really?
Oh, we have Google. We do have a Google Workspace license, you know, like for the more storage and unlimited stuff. But we have a shared Gmail inbox, and we have our OCD with the labels, like color labels. And what we do is with our contact form, we use Ninja Forms on our site. I've also been looking at Fluent Forms. If somebody wants other ones, I'm actually kind of a fan of them lately. And every dropdown, basically, if you pick like, you know, a feature request or, you know, support ticket or whatever you pick, it routes it. And with Gmail rules, it automatically tags it with the colored label. So whenever we sit down to our Gmail inbox every morning, most of them are already tagged for us, ready to go. So we know exactly when we click into it, it's like, okay, this is a feature request or this is a, so, and the way you do that is like Ninja Forms has different ways you can route things with the subject line. You can change the subject line based on what people pick from a dropdown, and then do a rule based on what's in the subject. So
the workflow, right?
kind of building a workflow with your contact form to Gmail with the labels. And again, once you get a bigger team, that doesn't work anymore, obviously, but works really well for like really small teams.
So how much do you spend on support versus development?
I spend a lot of time on support. And I would say, because I wouldn't actually, I'm a slow developer. I wouldn't consider myself like an amazing coder. I can look at PHP and figure out what's going on and like add things myself, but it would take me a lot longer than if like my brother Brett was doing it. Like he just thinks, coders think in a certain way that just think in loops and everything. And I'm not that way off the bat. And so he spends most of his time with development. And then he like hops in for like more like dev related tickets, like with certain functions and things that like maybe a little over my head or something. But then a lot of time I focus on like the performance tickets or how features work, or I do all the sales tickets, all the billing tickets, all the feature requests, all the other random stuff. Cause I try to keep my brother like on development more. So I don't really want him spending time on support tickets as much.
Right. So it's more about expertise.
More expertise. Yeah. And the nice thing about doing that is I kind of, since I'm looking at a lot of the tickets, I know a lot of what's going on for the content, like what I could improve. So I do take advantage, like back and forth, like I said before, like to help it make the content better.
I think we have got a lot of good content for people who are, handling the support and stuff. So I think that would be really helpful for the community. So I just wanted to, you mentioned your blog, Workup.
Yeah.
Isn't that the same one, which I think it was owned by Antonio? Is that the one?
It was a French guy.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes, absolutely. I remember.
Way back when. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. I remember he was watching his blog, reading his blog, 2008, 2009, I think. And it was he was putting out the best content ever. And it was at this time he was on Blogspot. And I don't think people even remember Blogspot, but it was there, blogspot.com. And he was on there, and then he, moved, I think, to WordPress at some point, and he used to own Workup. And I used to be a huge fan because of the way his design and the way he used to, do stuff, and the way his design sense was really good. Probably the French connection, but it was one of my best, the blogs I used to read. But then I was surprised to see that domain, and I thought there might be some spelling mistake because it was so identical. And then I went into the history and I find out, okay, it is the same one. So how did you land it there?
One funny thing, I didn't buy it from him. He, for some reason, whatever, he dropped off the face of the planet. I don't know, like, honestly, like I haven't looked recently, but when I went to look at that domain, like he hadn't updated his social media for a year or something at that point. And I looked everywhere and like he hadn't updated any content. So I don't know, like, honestly, I don't know if he like died, to be honest.
No, he's still there. He's into the journalism more.
Okay. Yeah. So I think what happened is probably he got a different job, got too busy, and it just stopped doing that or something. So I think that's what happened. So I think, I'm trying to remember how I got it. I think it expired or something. And so I saw it and grabbed it basically.
Did you knew this website before?
I had gotten to it a couple of times because it had a lot of like web developer tips on it. Like that's what it was kind of popular for. Like JavaScript tutorials and like all that kind of stuff. So like, yeah, I was familiar for it too. And maybe that's how I saw that it was available, because I had gone to it or saw it pop up. And and I looked everywhere, and like I even reached out to him, and like he had just dropped off the face of the planet. So I figured at that point, like, man, I better snatch this before somebody else does, because it had expired. Like literally, it was just sitting there available. So I grabbed it and basically just rode the domain authority, kept going.
I'm glad that you have the same vibe of the, branding that he had, because when I see the work of today, it feels very similar. The vibe is definitely there. So I'm glad you did that.
Yeah. yeah, I tried to keep it. It was kind of the same niche. He was definitely more like JavaScript developer focused than I am. But it definitely helped, I think. And for anyone like acquiring domains, like just because of the domain authority, like if you change the niche of the content too much, like the domain authority will drop off and it won't help. So one of the reasons I kind of did that was kind of because it was kind of in the same niche. So it does help. If you're like trying to like buy another domain or trying to acquire an expired domain or something, make sure it's like in the same like topics and niche and stuff. So.
And so I did had a word with him a couple of years ago, and I think he's moved on to, you know, much bigger stuff in the French journalism. So I think he has found a good way for him. So
Cool.
You also mentioned you were installing EDD. You went into the rabbit hole of EDD. I was shocked when I saw Pippin had just sold, you know, and it was a shock for me. And how was your response when you saw it for the first time?
Honestly, I forget what he always said in his blog post. He wrote a long blog post, like a farewell or whatever. But honestly, I think he's probably burned out, to be honest. Even if he didn't say that in that blog post, he might. Maybe he did.
I felt the same.
I think he's burned out. And most exiters of WordPress, I would probably say 90% of them are burned out, even if they don't say it, because he also has his like brewery business too. And I think he just saw like an opportunity of like, you know, I've grown this like huge to a good space, and I just want to focus on the brewery and kind of spend more time with, I think he said, his family and stuff. So I think he was just ready to like, kind of like I did, like just go back to a slower kind of work environment. And so just kind of said like, okay, it's time. And I think everybody finds, you know, there's a time for everybody at some point. But I was surprised by that one. That one, there's a lot of acquisitions over the last 2 years, but that one definitely caught me off guard. There are some positive though, because automotive, right? It's the one that acquired them. And one thing, or Automotive, I always get their name. Oh, okay, automotive, yeah. And they do a great job at graphs and like reporting data, because they have like their analytics plugin, I think. And so whoever works on their teams has done like improved their graphs and reporting data for years. And so I think what's going to happen is we're going to see like immediately like awesome like new pretty graphs and data in EDD, which they're horrible. They've never had great data. So I'm looking forward to that as far as a business owner, because sometimes I can't even get some of the data I actually really need. So
right. So EDD definitely requires a lot of improvement. It has been the same for a long time. And I think Saeed Balki, who I think he's a very smart guy, and I think he will surely do something to, you know, it will surely, EDD will again see his new phase of growth, I think. But for us, people like us who have been using EDD for years, I think it's very hard to update because a lot of dependencies and a lot of...
Oh, there are. And I think it will get better for sure, because I think Saeed also, of anyone in the WordPress space, I would probably say Saeed has the most money. And so he's going to throw money at development for EDD, because it's a big project, and like he knows what it can grow to. And so like he's going to throw a lot of development money and stuff into it. So that's what I'm excited about, because it will get better. And the problem though is, like you said, with updates, sometimes EDD is actually one of the only plugins that I usually stay 1 or 2 versions behind on.
Same thing.
Because there's a lot of things that go wrong. And I think WooCommerce, I work on a lot of WooCommerce client sites to fix performance issues, but I've never extensively used WooCommerce myself that much to like, as a, like to sell things. But I think it's the same way with that. There's just, when it comes to e-commerce stuff, there's a lot of moving parts. And so sometimes it's better to say like 1 or 2 versions behind, because, and if you break like, if you break like your connection to PayPal API, or like anything can go wrong. It's just, there's a lot of moving things in there, and break the checkout page, or you have to be really careful. And that's the one downfall, I think. And if anyone's just starting, like just be really careful with, don't always like go after the shiny new update always with the e-commerce plugins, like wait a little bit and they'll fix the bugs over the next couple of weeks. And
the thing that complicates EDD is the license keys, because it's not just the payment which is happening. So for WooCommerce or Shopify, it's very easy because the moment they make the payment, it's just that entry that they are doing, right? It's not the renewal sometimes, right? It's not all the entries are not connected with each other, or the product is, it's going out. But here, everything is interconnected, the license keys, the products, the updates, the support. So there's a lot of spaghetti that is happening in the background.
Yeah. No, like you said, with Shopify, usually you don't have to worry about any of that stuff because you're not controlling like the updates of the e-commerce part. So like you don't have to worry about like PayPal breaking or stuff like that.
I think Pippin was building that. I don't know if you have seen that or not, but Pippin was actually working on that from what I saw. He was working on this product called Sellbird, and I was very excited.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he was mentioning that it's one of the huge projects that he's doing. And but anyways, I think I'm happy for him. Like burnout is not good for anybody. I mean, people can make a lot of money, but mental health is extremely important. And I think we should all focus on that.
Yeah. And he's been in this space a long time too. So
yeah,
sometimes you just want to go do other stuff too. Like,
I mean, and he has huge, tons of land, which he needs to take care of.
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah. So I think he's made his money at this point, and he's just going to focus on other things. So yeah, but I'm excited.
He comes back. He comes back once more. Oh
yeah. No, he might, you could get bored too at some point and then come back and start a new project again too.
So in a way, I feel that while talking, I realized this, that burnout can be good sometimes for entrepreneurs, because, you can't grow until you hustle. And once you hustle, you're definitely going to burn out. And if you won't burn out, you won't learn how to take care of your mental health. I didn't even know that this was a real thing. When people used to talk about mental health, I was like, is that even a thing? But once I burnt out, I realized that, it's a good thing. It is a thing. And if you take it positively, it can definitely improve your life and productivity.
Yeah, for sure. I think, is it Corey Miller? I think he used to be at iThemes, I think, or Post Status or something. But I think he just left whatever he was doing, and he's one of the people that does talk about mental health, like more in the public eye. So like if anyone like go Google like Corey Miller, I think it is, and with WordPress, and you'll find his blogs probably come up. But he does some really good jobs. I always read his stuff because, like you said, like mental health is not talked about enough. And also, like you said, sometimes burnout is a positive thing. Like actually right now, like I almost consider myself blessed, like where I am right now, because like I'm eating healthier. I'm working out. And I'm a lot healthier physically than I was like right before I left Kinsta. So yeah, sometimes it can be a blessing in disguise to get back on track. So
I think we have covered a lot of good stuff for people to listen to, and I've learned a lot of new things from you as well. Let's just focus on one last point, that is execution versus prioritization. How do you execute? How do you prioritize? How do you strategize?
I think for me, I'm not a very organized person, to be honest. But I do I do like live and die by my Trello board. So I would say like in that regard, like if I lost my Trello board, like I would literally, I don't even know what I would do. Like it would be a complete disaster. But my Trello board is just a complete mess when you get inside of it. I know where everything is at, but if someone else looked at it, it would just be a nightmare. But I think getting organization down, because when I was at Kinsta, like towards the end, like when we were actually hiring people to kind of come in and like do writing and like get better workflows in place, I wasn't just me writing every day anymore. It was more like getting whole workflows down. The guy that we brought on, Mateo, he previously worked at Codable, which is like a WordPress dev company. He came in immediately, like set up his Trello board. And like after a couple of weeks, I was like, holy crap, this guy is so organized. I was like, wow. And then my board is just like chaos. So there are things I think you need to find like where your weaknesses are. So for my weakness, I know I'm not an organized person. I try to keep improving that, but my Trello board just keeps getting messier and messier. So I guess you can be successful either way. But I would say try to get organized first. If you're a messy person, at least get everything in Trello, like, so it's not like in random places. And that'll like help focus your time more. And then I think once you know what's working, then do like the 80-20 rule. Spend 80% of your time on, what's working already, and 20% of the time like on everything else. I think I see so many people, and we actually, many of us at Kinsta talked about this all the time in Slack, like the 80-20 rule of like, we kind of like kept each other in check of like, why are you working on this thing that's not going to really help much or like see much results? So like you need to focus on this, which can be boring at times, like, because you're just like maybe doing the same thing over and over for years. But it works. I mean, the 80-20 rule works. Like, focus on what's working. And if the other stuff, like, you think it's just like a monotonous task, get it done, it's probably not very important. Like I'll have random tasks sometimes, like I'm trying to think of a good example. Like updating description or something that I see is out of date somewhere on like a little plugin thing or something. Like if it's just a description and very small, like it's probably not very important. Like if I have more prioritized tasks, like go focus on those first. People sometimes, the bad thing with Trello is they think like, oh, if you get 100 tasks done in a day, then I'm successful. Not always true. Like what were those 100 tasks? If they were just like tedious, menial little things, it's probably not going to add up to much in the end. So like focus, on like the 80-20 rule, like what's working the best for your company, and then just pour all your time into that.
I think that is a smart move. I think that would be the right way to go. So,
yeah.
Off-topic question: What tool you use for cycling?
For cycling?
For bike rides, for tracking bike rides. What tool do you use?
I actually don't even use a tool right now.
Really?
So like I just have a mountain bike, and I just go on like some back roads behind my place, and so a lot of times they're just like little hills or roads that there's not much traffic on them, and like I'll sometimes just like go, and they're pretty long, and I'll just go and like I'll just go till I am tired and can't go anymore.
So I use Strava, and Strava is pretty good. I think it's very okay, Strava.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, you must, because it really helps, to stay as it's because I like analytical stuff. So I really I always analyze like how many kilometers I'm doing, how many calories I'm burning, and all stuff. So I try to make sure that I stay at least 50 kilometers a week. That's my target.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out, because I have no clue what I'm doing right now. I know how many like laps I'm doing in the cycle, but yeah, sometimes I'll just go until I can't go too. So
but it's really healthy. I mean, it does a lot of good stuff for your mind and your soul. So it's really good.
Yeah, no, I love cycling, and I'm just I hate running too. And like being like a skinny guy like me too, I don't think running really helps me that much. Like I don't really need to burn fat. Like I want to get my heartbeat up going and like sweating and stuff to like make sure I'm getting in that rhythm. But I hate running. It's kind of boring to me. So I really like biking for some reason. Yeah, I've always liked it.
So Brian, thank you so much for doing this. I had such a blast talking to you, and I think this was very helpful for people watching this.
Cool. Well, yeah, hopefully somebody gets some insights they can use with their own business and something.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time. I know we went on a little bit of, off topic, and we've kind of extended the time, but thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate answering all the questions patiently.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No problem.
Let's do this sometime once again.
Sure. Yeah. Anytime. Yeah. Anytime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Right.
We'll chat again soon. Have a
Bye.
good. Bye.